best in MTRA monster truck racing. From the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds in Springfield, Missouri, it's the Dodge Monster Drags. The stifling heat here in Springfield, Missouri is being generated by two people, Mother Nature and Dan Runte. For the first time this season, the Power Wheels Bigfoot is on top the PENDA Points Championship. And of course, traditionally, the Bigfoot organization racks up a lot of wins here in their home state of Missouri. Now, as the fans battle the heat from Mother Nature, the drivers feel the heat from Dan Runte. And here with more on how these drivers and crews combat the heat is Army Armstrong.
Gary, you're exactly right. The air atmosphere is very important today. Dan Runte's important because you've got to overcome both of them if you're going to win this thing. Because Runte and the Bigfoot crew are from the St. Louis area, this 95-degree stifling heat doesn't seem to bother them. As a matter of fact, they're tuning the truck for it. There's a lot of moisture in the air. We didn't have that earlier today. They seem to be taking horsepower away from the truck after qualifying and after the first round. They're going down on horsepower to go faster on the other end because they know the humidity coming in is going to affect the running of the engine. That's one train thought. Now, the Dodge boys, on the other hand, I'll give you the starting line, but they're putting more horsepower into those big Chrysler Hemi engines on the finish line and taking what they give you on the start right back on the other end of the track. Two trains of thought on how you make horsepower in this stifling heat and humidity that's going to play a major role before the day's over.
Now, earlier today, Dan Runte would turn in the best qualifying time, but look at the problems he had on his first qualifying pass. Almost gets, well, he does high-set it a bit right there, almost got it over as your top five qualifiers, Runte, Meager, Porter, Deppy, and Schaefer. Now we have some highlights from round one staged earlier today. Fred Schaefer in the barefoot truck going against Dan Patrick and Sampson. Patrick back for the first time since he injured his back in Bloomsburg. Now Patrick comes back. As we take a look at Fred Schaefer's time, Patrick will come back as the fast loser. Good hard racing continued from round one. Moving violation, Brian Welsh, Paul Schaefer, the Monster Patrol.
Both independents made a good run. Schaefer starting to really put some horsepower to work for him.
Brian Welsh comes back as the second fast loser. Alan Pizzo, the Predator, and Ken Deppy in Rampage. Pezzo, after tangling with Fred Schaefer in the last race in Springfield, puts together a good, strong run.
But he suffered from Dodge fever real bad.
So some highlights from round one. We have round two action coming up from, the popcorn vendor. We'll take a couple boxes of hot buttered popcorn right up here at the broadcast booth. We're coming right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds here in Springfield, Missouri for the Dodge Monster Drags. Let's go back to the starting line, and here's Army Armstrong.
Gary, the starting line has kind of given us some unique problems here today. It was so dusty after the first round of competition, the track officials decided to water down, dampen it down, okay? Get a little bit of moisture in here to keep the dust down. But what happened was as soon as they did that, then they started to get some real mud, okay? Now, the drivers don't like the mud either, so what the drivers do, they come up to the starting line, stop, and do what they call a dry hop or a burnout. What that does is throw all the mud out of the way. So they're right back to square one. They're right back to where they started before they ever tried to change the track. Gary, back to you.
Well, Army, as we take a look now at the pairings for round two, the Power Wheels against Sampson, Barefoot, Carolina Crusher, the Monster Patrol, and Rampage, and Bigfoot against Moving Violation. And first we'll take a look at the Sampson truck with Dan Patrick, and as he stages up against the big Ford of Dan Runte. There's Dan Patrick back from that back injury he suffered earlier this season. And there's a look at Dan Runte in the Power Wheels Bigfoot.
You know, that injury that he suffered as Runte's graphic comes up on the screen really had a lot of people scared because all these guys race hard and everything, but that truck, when it lands so hard. We've had helmets fall off. We've had drivers fall through safety restraints. Like you say, it's just like falling out of a two-story window, but you do it over and over.
Well, Sampson with some trouble in the far lane just does get over the last set of cars. Dan Runte, a 5.38. So the success here in Springfield continues for the Bigfoot organization as we take a look at the feet of Fred Schaefer in the Barefoot Dodge. I'll tell you, he must feel some pressure because Dodge is sponsoring this event this weekend as he stages the big Dodge at a Pontoon Beach, Illinois, over in the St. Louis area. And he pulls up alongside Gary Porter in the Carolina Crusher. Gary, of course, an independent who's been a force to be reckoned with for a number of years. And earlier, before the competition began, Army had a close look at Gary's seat.
When the 10,000-pound monster trucks land from their flight of horsepower, a certain amount of energy has to be absorbed in three main ways. Now, the tire will absorb some of the energy. The tires have about 3 or 4 pounds of air. Then the nitrogen shocks will absorb some of the energy again. That's 2 of the 3, but one of the most important ways you've got to absorb energy is through the driver and through his body. Now, I am literally standing underneath the seat of a monster truck. It's a very sturdy mounted seat, very secure, but we're not sure that's exactly what you need in this sport because the driver lands with such an impact straight down that it has a tendency to put a lot of pressure on his back and on his spinal cord. So a lot of research and development is going on in the seat end of this thing to maybe loosen the seat up a little bit, put a shock absorber on it or something to let there be just a little bit of give to take some of that pressure off the driver's back when they land so hard.
Yeah, a lot of stunt drivers now in Hollywood are using spring-loaded seats to absorb the shock of the impact. Fred Schaefer against Gary Porter.
Dodge Chevrolet. We got a race.
Well, now, who won that one? I honestly don't know. Fred Schaefer barefoot a 5:57.
57 to take the win, but it was an awfully close race, Gary. Let's take a look at this one again.
Well, that was a photo finish indeed. A 5:57 for Fred Schaefer. In slow motion, here it is.
Porter actually settles down in no man's land first. Then Schaefer cranks the trigger on that big Dodge.
Ever so close, and here's Fred.
Fred, the way the trucks are set up, it looks to me like you're giving them the starting line but having to pull it back on the other end. But that was awfully close.
Yeah, Army, you're right. There's hardly no traction all up there. I think my tire's rotating 2 turns before the truck ever moves. The times are way off.
Another Schaefer boy. This is Paul Schaefer coming up. No relation to Fred. He drives the Monster Patrol. And we have another Dodge of Ken Deppy, the teammate to Fred Schaefer.
Deppy's also out of the Show Me State. We talked earlier about the Bigfoot boys wanting to do good for the local people. Believe me, this kid does too.
Well, I tell you, Fred Schaefer's real close to the Show Me State in Pontoon Beach, Illinois.
You know, I would imagine per capita there's more monster trucks out of the state of Missouri than any state in the country. Meanwhile, this young man is an auto salvage operator, has a past world championship in the sport of mud racing, got into this sport about 2 or 3 years ago, and believe me, Paul Schaefer is going to be a player. He just got to get that all-important time in the seat.
Paul comes out of northern Indiana. There's a look at the front of his monster truck. Stages alongside Ken Deppy. Another great run. Who won that one? Paul Schaefer, a 5:39. Boy, we're seeing some great close competition here in Springfield.
The trick is not the starting line. The trick is no man's land. Watch them. Both of them leave pretty good, but who can get down and dirty in the middle right there?
This is to settle the chassis down and hook up the horsepower.
Exactly. The Dodge did a wheelie. It cost him.
Well, here is Paul Schaefer.
Well, the Chevrolet hopes are still alive, and the colors carried by the Monster Patrol, Paul Schaefer. That was an awfully good run, Paul.
Well, I'm starting to learn how to shift this thing a little bit better. Before, I used to run an automatic transmission. It would shift all by itself. Now I got to grab 3 gears and about 250 feet, and it's taking me a little while to get used to shifting it like that.
Boy, you're busy in the cockpit of a monster truck indeed for a very short ride. Next pairing coming up, Eric Meager, Bigfoot, out of St. Louis, Missouri. Some big feet, if you will, to replace there with the departure of Andy Brass. And there's a look at Eric Meager in the Bigfoot organization. And he will stage against Brian Welsh in the moving violation.
The GMC of Welsh, a privateer. But this Eric Meager kid, he's a good All-American kid. If there's any such thing, Bob Chandler has a knack for picking good drivers. This kid's coming in taking Andy Brass's seat. Meanwhile, Brian Welch, he's an up-and-comer. He'll run with anybody. He's proven he can be competitive. So we have probably the future of the sport on the starting line right here. Far lane of GMC, near lane of Ford.
Like the sound of the raw horsepower, the Ford turning out the horses, and Eric takes it a 5:13. The run's getting faster.
What's happened is some of the moisture that they laid down the starting line, we told you they kicked it out. The moisture was affecting them in no man's land. Now the heat's starting to dry it out, and they can put a little bit more horsepower into that no man's land area.
Meager coming right at you. Great ride at 5:13. He's standing by with Army.
Well, Gary's taking just a little while for him to get out of the truck because the crew chief, Gary Saline, had to go check the race pack computer to get the information on the vehicle, and The computer can tell you everything you want. My observation is that starter is not consistent, man. He's bouncing around, keeping you guys on your toes, isn't he?
He is. He's making us, maybe in the past people had a lot of guesswork going into it, but he's definitely not being consistent with it, which is keeping us on our toes. It makes it very tough and difficult on the line, but as you know, in the past, the line is where it's won or lost usually here. And with the lane choice, we got to stay on top of that. We got to have lane choice if we want to have the advantage going into the race.
And he will indeed have that, a good run for Eric Meeker in Bigfoot. Hey, the kids are here. They're enjoying their pogs. We're enjoying the competition. Come back and join us. So who will find the key to victory here in Springfield? I wonder if you could fire that junker up. Well, that's just the trunk key, though. Welcome back to Springfield. We are ready for the semifinals, and we have Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge represented. But, of course, Dodge is sponsoring this weekend's competition. And there's one of the bow tie brigade right there, the Monster Patrol. And there's one of the Ford representatives, Bigfoot, Eric Meeker, and Paul Schaefer.
You notice how quiet it just got? What they're doing, they're checking the kill systems on this vehicle. Are the electronic interrupters? Number one on the window indicates that's the channel he's on. Okay, the monster trucks run a safety device that a lot of other people don't run. That is a kill switch operated away from the truck. Before every run, they'll back the truck up, activate the shut off or safety kill system just to make sure it works. Because believe me, there is not a wall in the state of Missouri that'll stop one of these things if it gets after it.
We've seen them before just climb over walls, and squad cars, and anything that gets in the way.
Stands.
That's right.
There's
Concession
the guy
stands.
that's got everybody kind of buffalo because he's not in a rhythm. They can't read the light. They can't read him. They can't pressure this guy. He's not doing anything wrong. He's just doing it his way. And his way is to change his style of how long you sit on that line on every run. See, they'll go up on the torque converter now.
A good run by Paul Schaefer, but it is Eric Meeker. The Ford knocks out the Chevrolet. Meeker, a 5:14. He was a 5:13 the last one. Very consistent for Meeker and the Bigfoot organization.
Meeker has got a handle on this track in that lane. The question is, if he goes down into the brackets, will he be able to stay in the right lane? He told us a moment ago how important lane choice was.
Well, you talk about young talent and how Bob Chandler picks it. He's a good one. Here's Eric.
After each round of competition, crew chief Gary Saleen immediately goes back to read the plugs because they're detuning the engine. I try to tell people at the beginning of the show it's hard to believe you can actually take horsepower out of an engine and go faster, but on a day like today, that's exactly what you're doing.
You have to with the weather conditions and the way the motor's reacting to the conditions. Gary here's doing a fine job actually detuning the motor. I don't know if that's a compliment in itself or not, but we're going each round we're coming out ahead, so in a way it is a compliment to him.
Well, his teammate, the other big blue driver, as we take a look at the work continuing, is Runte, and Runte pulls up against this guy right here, Fred Schaefer in the Dodge Barefoot. So this will have a Dodge and a Ford pairing. And of course, Ford would love to win this thing because of the home state fans, but Dodge would love to win it because they're sponsoring this event. And Army talked to Fred about the added pressure from corporate sponsorship.
When the Barefoot crew rolls into town, you're going to see names on the side of their vehicles like Dodge Motorsports, Viper Auto Security, Mopar Performance, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Mopar Express Lube. And I tell you what, Fred Schaefer, you're the kingpin here, but everybody knows when you get a major sponsor, you get major responsibilities too.
It is a major responsibility, Army, to have a team like this, and we're building a real good team now. We've got different people that do different things on the chassis, the shocks, and that gives me more time for research and development to get the truck actually dialed in.
The team members you have, you broaden your base. That's got to take a lot of pressure off of you. You used to do all this by yourself. Now the sport is down to hundredths and thousandths of a second. So having this help has got to take that pressure off of you.
It does, Army, and also we've got 4 trucks touring the country now, so that's also helped us take a lot of pressure off of one truck running every weekend or 2 trucks trying to run every weekend with all the demand we have. So the more trucks, the more people. Now it's getting more relaxed, and we can get back to more research and development.
So let's see if that research and development can pay dividends here in Springfield.
I guarantee you, old Fast Freddy is not relaxed right now. He wants to beat this Ford. There's no love lost between these two guys. A lot of respect, but there's no love lost. Because one of them drives a Dodge, the other one drives a Ford, and there's the trump card. Keep going back to this guy. He's doing a good job. He's tricking the drivers. It's exactly what he's doing when making them drive these trucks. They can't intimidate the starter.
looks like Fred Schaefer. Indeed, Fred Schaefer in the final. Look at that 5.07. That would give him, I do believe, lane choice for the championship run as he knocks out Dan Runte and the Power Wheels Bigfoot. Let's look at this again. A good run for both guys, but Fred Schaefer right in no man's land picks up the throttle and the horsepower, wins it. Let's go trackside with Fred and Army.
Crew chiefs playing a major role today. Every time you guys come back, they're jumping in, thrashing. What's going on here now?
Army, this blistering heat out here, oil temp got real high, oil pressure dropped off. We're going to drain the oil and put some fresh stuff in here and hoping to make it to the next round.
Final shootout coming up, Dodge against Ford. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds here in Springfield. The Dodge Monster Drags, like the four-wheel Jamborees, are part of the Special Events Performance Series. Visit the manufacturer's Midway. There's also several categories of show and shine competition. To find out when a Jamboree or a Monster Drag will be in your area, contact the Special Events Promotion Company and take part in this four-wheel fun. We are ready now for the finals here in Springfield. It has been hot. It has been humid. And speaking of being hot, Fred Schaefer just talked about how hot that Dodge Hemi's getting.
Yeah, he was trying to change the oil to cool the engine down. He runs a dry block setup. There's no coolant in the engine. The only way he can cool it down is by changing the oil and running more alcohol in the engine. Meanwhile, and that gives you more horsepower. Meanwhile, the Ford guys we told you are still in horsepower, but the story, Gary, is the lane choice. Meager's going into a lane he hadn't been in all day long.
Well, Fred, of course, laid down that 5.07 run, so he gets the lane choice. You take a look at the starter. Once again, Ford against Dodge. Dodge would love to win this one because Dodge is the corporate sponsor for this weekend's event.
Yeah, but when that light turns green, Gary, nobody knows who the corporate sponsor is. The man in the black and white shirt is in control of this race right now. Let's see what's going to happen. And both drivers trying to work up on the torque converter. Whoa, far lane move, Gary. Then the light goes green and the red truck goes dead and the blue truck goes the other end. That kind of sums it up.
So Eric Meager takes the victory here in a Dodge-sponsored event. So Ford victorious as Barefoot heads back to the pit area. Meager's time of 5.22, not as fast as what Fred Schaefer was the last round, but a problem right there at the start. Dan Runte still leads the PENDA Points Championship over Fred Schaefer, Eric Meager, Gary Porter, and Ken Deppy.
In poker, they call it a bluff. What happened? And Schaefer went to the line knowing he did not have the engine cooled down. He took a shot. It didn't work out.
Of course, Bigfoot could have red lighted and Fred would have won, but here's your winner.
Hey, Gary Lee, how do you spell the word respect? R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Son, they respect you now.
I hope so, but we spelled it a little different. We spelled F-O-R-D. Something you ought to respect. The best never rest. Like I said, we're on our way back and we're coming on strong. I just hope everybody else realizes it.
2 straight wins in Springfield, Missouri for Bob Chandler's bunch and 5 straight overall going back to Lima, Ohio. This is just what the rest of the PENDA Point Series field did not want to see as we head to the midway point of the season. Let's send it now over to Army Armstrong.
Fred, so close, but it sounded like something was going away in the engine when you rolled to the line.
Well, I hate to lose them like that, Army. This dry block here, you know, in this extreme heat we've had this weekend, and I pulled the line, the oil pressure was down. I really thought I could make it, and I accelerated, and there's a valve or something's wrong there.
Okay, now real quick, folks, I'm going to tell you what a dry block is. You don't run any liquid in it at all. It's exactly what the name implies. With it over 100 degrees now, that's exactly what he's talking about. You get the engine heat, they change the oil, they try to cool it down and everything. So basically, you did everything you could do. That's just the nature of the beast.
You're right, Armin. We did. We changed oil between rounds. We did everything we could do. It's this extreme heat has took its toll on it.
Hope you've enjoyed today's monster truck racing from Springfield, Missouri. For Army Armstrong, I'm Gary Lee. We'll see you next week on Trucks and Tractor Power. Now here's news of an exciting video release from Diamond P Sports.
What could follow the 3 volumes of Diamond P's and They Walked Away series? A 4th, and They Walked Away 4, like its predecessors, captures the most perilous moments in recent motorsports history. Unmerciful doubles, unbelievable flips, falls, and fires, and in every harrowing incident, the driver beats the odds. Once again, man and machine test their mettle through mayhem in over a dozen motorsports disciplines. You can't find this video in stores. You can't rent it. And anyone who has it won't let you beg, borrow, or steal it. Then how do you get your own copy of And They Walked Away 4? Call 1-800-652 1-800-652-8686. Or send $24.95 plus $4 shipping and handling to the address on your screen. 1-800-652-8686. Or charge it on your Visa, MasterCard, or Discover card. Call 1-800-652-8686. 1-800-652-8686. Or charge it on your Visa, MasterCard, or Discover card.